The evening was supposed to be quiet, the kind of end-of-day calm where the world finally exhales, and you can hear the cicadas humming against the backdrop of a fading orange sky. I had just set down a mug of coffee on the table, leaning back into the worn couch, when the first set of knocks rattled my door. They weren't polite knocks, either. They were sharp, impatient, the kind of pounding that carries entitlement with it. Like the world owed the knocker immediate attention. I knew even before opening the door who it was. Karen, my upstairs neighbor. If there was besides the leaky pipes, it was her uncanny ability to create conflict out of thin air. In the 3 months since I'd moved in, she had already confronted me for supposed noise violations. At 2 in the afternoon, no less, accused me of horning the laundry machines, and once cornered me in the hallway to scold me for having the wrong kind of doormat. The kind of woman who thought she owned not just her space, but the air surrounding it. I pulled the door open slowly, already bracing myself. There she was. Blonde hair pulled tight in a bun that seemed one sharp word away from snapping loose. Arms crossed like a shield. Her face was a storm of disdain, eyebrows drawn into a scowl so practiced it could have been permanent. You. She spat, jabbing a finger toward my chest as though she were identifying a suspect in a lineup. You don't belong here. You've been squatting in that apartment, and I want you gone. I stared at her, more amused than anything else. Good evening to you too, Karen. What exactly are you talking about this time? She scoffed, stepping closer, invading the threshold of my doorway as if she had the authority to. Don't play dumb. I know the landlord. I know who's supposed to live here. And it's not you. You broke in. You're trespassing. This is my building. And I'm not going to let some stranger creep around here. Her words hung in the air, ridiculous, but it took a slow breath. I took a slow breath. The instinct to argue back burned on my tongue, but I had learned, both in life and in my line of work, that sometimes silence was the stronger weapon. I simply tilted my head, waiting, letting her fill the vacuum. And of course she did. I've been watching you. She continued, her voice climbing higher, sharper. Odd hours, coming and going. And don't think I don't hear the noises. Who knows what you're doing down here? For all I know, you could be a criminal, eh? I held up a hand. Karen, stop. I live here. I pay rent here. I have every right. No, you don't. She barked, cutting me off. Her face flushed red, and she pulled her phone from her pocket with the dramatic flair of a gunslinger drawing a pistol. You know what? I'm not arguing with you anymore. I'm calling the police. Let's see how fast you pack up when you're in. That caught my attention. My jaw tightened as I straightened up. You're calling 911. For what? Because your neighbor exists in his own apartment. She smirked, thumbing the screen. Because a trespasser in this building. Because there's a dangerous man right here pretending to live in an apartment that isn't his. I'm doing my civic duty. I took a step forward, lowering my voice, hoping logic might wedge its way into her frenzy. Karen, think carefully. Making a false report is serious. You could. But the line was already ringing. She turned her shoulder toward me, deliberately excluding me from the conversation like a child tattling to a teacher. Then came the voice, faint but unmistakable, the calm, measured cadence of a dispatcher. 911, what's your emergency? Karen inhaled sharply, then transformed. Her voice shifted from shrill and commanding to small, quivering, the sound of practiced vulnerability. Yes, hello. There's a strange man in my building. He broke into the apartment downstairs. I think he's dangerous. Please, hurry. My chest tightened. She wasn't just exaggerating. She was weaponizing her lie, turning it into a performance designed to provoke the fastest, harshest response. I could see her in action like a theater actor hitting her lines, the hushed urgency, the tremor in her voice, the way she glanced at me like she was gauging the effect. Yes, he's here right now, she whispered dramatically. He's standing right in front of me. I don't feel safe. My fists curled at my sides. A dozen emotions clashed inside me, anger at her gall, disbelief at her audacity, and a sharp, gnawing concern at the reality of what her words might trigger. Because I knew better than most, when an emergency call paints someone as a threat, officers arrive primed for confrontation. They're already on edge before they step out of the car. And she was painting me as the threat. Units are on the way. The dispatcher's voice came through faintly from her phone. Karen cooked the call closed, her face instantly shedding its fragile mask. Now she looked triumphant, lips twisting into a smug little smile. There. We'll see how long your little game lasts once the police arrive. I let out a long, controlled breath, the kind that comes only from years of training. This was a dangerous game she was playing, but she didn't know the rules as well as she thought. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know the badge I carried in my wallet, the oath I had sworn, the truth I had lived. She had no idea that in her attempt to sick the system on me, she had actually just delivered herself into my hands. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. Because when the flashing lights appeared and the sirens wailed their way down the street, it wouldn't be me sweating under their questions. It would be her. And she had written the ending herself the moment she dialed those 3 numbers. The sirens came first, faint at the edge of the neighborhood, rising quickly as the units closed in. Their echo bounced between the old brick walls of the apartment complex, a sound that usually made people step outside, curious, craning their necks to see what trouble had unfolded nearby. Tonight, though, it wasn't just nearby. It was right at my front door. Karen had already stationed herself outside like a sentry waiting to be praised for her service. I watched her through the blinds as she paced, waving her arms dramatically, rehearsing her lines like a witness eager to be believed. Her voice carried into the still night, shrill and authoritative. This way. Over here. She looked less like a frightened resident than an actress desperate for a big break. The cruisers pulled up with their headlights cutting across the lawn, engines humming as 2 uniformed officers stepped out. Their movements were brisk, professional, hands resting near their holsters, eyes sweeping the scene for the Suntshooter. I knew that stance well. Alert, cautious, already running through worst-case scenarios in their heads. I had walked in their shoes more times than I could count. Karen darted toward them before they could even shut their doors, her words spilling out like bullets. That's him. That's the man. He broke in downstairs. He doesn't live here. You have to arrest him right now before he hurts someone. The officers followed her pointing finger toward my apartment. Their gazes locked on me through the window. For a split second, I could see the calculation in their eyes. Is he a threat? Is he armed? How do we approach? I opened the door calmly, slowly, my hands visible at my sides. The last thing I wanted was to escalate the tension her lies had already created. Evening, officers, I said evenly, my tone calm but firm. They stopped at the bottom of the steps, eyes narrowing slightly. One of them spoke first. Sir, we got a call about a possible trespasser in this building. You live here. Instead of answering right away, I reached into my pocket, deliberate and measured. Their eyes tracked the movement, muscles tensing. I pulled out and held it out for them to see. The golden shield gleamed under the harsh glow of the cruiser's headlights. Detective Harris, I said, my voice carrying the authority I had earned over years of service. Off duty, yes, but this is my apartment, on the mailbox, my furniture, my life inside, not hers. The officers blinked, taken aback. You could almost see the shift in their body language. The tension easing, the suspicion redirecting. They glanced at each other, then back at me. Karen froze mid-rant, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. No, that's not true. He's pretending. He doesn't live here. I know everyone in this building, and he's some imposter. I didn't break eye contact with the officers. Instead, I reached behind me, grabbed the folder I had left on the side table, and stepped forward to offer it. My lease agreement. Signed, notarized. You'll also find utility bills with my name on them, all tied to this address. I'm as legitimate as it gets. The taller officer flipped through the pages, his expression neutral but firm. He nodded once, handing it back. That seems clear enough. Then he turned his attention to Karen. Ma'am, do you have any proof of your claim? Any evidence that he doesn't live here? Her face twisted. Disbelief painted across her features. Evidence. I don't need evidence. I know. I've lived here for years. I hear everything that happens, and I know when something doesn't belong. He doesn't belong. The second officer's voice was sharper now, no longer indulgent. That's not how this works. You called 911 and reported a break-in. You said this man was a stranger and dangerous. We show up, and he's not only the legal tenant, but he's also a detective with the badge to prove it. That's a problem. Karen's bravado faltered, but she tried to push forward anyway. No, you don't understand. He tricked you. He forged those papers. I was just trying to protect the building. I finally spoke, my tone cool but edged with steel. Protect the building. Or protect your ego. Karen, you made a false report. You called in an emergency that didn't exist. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Officers respond ready for a threat. And your lie could have gotten someone hurt. Or worse. Her eyes darted back and forth between me and the officers, desperation clawing at her voice. You can't. He's the one who should be in trouble. I called for help. I'm the victim here. The taller officer shook his head. No, ma'am. You wasted emergency resources, put your neighbors at risk, and falsely accused someone of a crime. That's not being a victim. That's a criminal offense. Karen's composure cracked. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with the realization that the script she'd written for herself wasn't going to play out. You can't arrest me, she whispered, almost pleading now. I was just trying to do the right thing. The officer stepped forward, voice flat authoritative. Ma'am, you're under arrest for filing a false police report. Turn around. Place your hands behind your back. Her body jerked as if the words had physically struck her. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. No. No, this isn't happening. You're supposed to arrest him. I called you here to get rid of him. He's the problem. The younger officer moved in, guiding her arms behind her back with practiced efficiency. The metallic click of handcuffs snapped through the night air. Karen shrieked, twisting, protesting every inch of the way. You can't do this to me. I live here. I pay rent. I'm the one who called you. Her voice pitched higher with every word frantic, hysterical. I stood in the doorway, calm and steady, watching the scene unfold. There was no gloating in me. No smile of victory, just a quiet, inevitable conclusion. Karen had moments she dialed those 3 numbers. She wanted a confrontation, and she got one. Just not the one she expected. The cruiser door slammed shut behind her. Her muffled scream still audible through the glass. The officers gave me one last nod. Sorry for the trouble, detective. We'll file the report and notify the landlord. You shouldn't have to deal with this again. Appreciate it. I replied simply. When the cruisers pulled away and the flashing lights disappeared into the distance, silence settled over the building. For the first time since I'd moved in, the night felt still. No pounding on the walls, no shrill accusations echoing through the vents. Just peace. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long moment, exhaling slowly. In her attempt to brand me as an outsider, Karen had revealed herself as the real danger. And tonight, justice hadn't just knocked on the door. It had walked right through it.